She was Jo Polniaczek, the defiantly tough spirit of the facts of life, a girl who never let her guard down for anyone. But behind the scenes of the 80s greatest sitcom, a teenage Nancy McKeon was deeply secretly in love with a young man who was about to become the world's most famous time traveler. At 60, she finally admits that Michael J. Fox was the one, revealing a private reality that was far more vulnerable than any character she ever played. Nancy McKeon arrived in the world on April 4th, 1966, in Westbury, New York. Growing up in a middle-class household, her father Donald worked as a travel agent, while her mother Barbara managed the family's daily routines. However, the McKeon household quickly gravitated toward the entertainment industry. Nancy began her career incredibly early, modeling for Sears catalogs and appearing in baby product commercials by the time she was 2 years old. Long before she could fully understand the concept of fame, she was riding the Long Island Railroad into Manhattan for casting calls. She grew up learning the precise mechanics of hitting a mark and memorizing lines, treating acting simply as the family trade. The landscape of her life shifted entirely in 1975. Her older brother Philip McKeon secured the role of Tommy Hyatt on the hit sitcom Alice, prompting the entire family to pack up and move across the country to Los Angeles. Thrust into the epicenter of the television industry, Nancy immediately joined the demanding child acting circuit. Throughout the late 1970s, she quietly built her resume with guest appearances on popular procedurals like Starsky and Hutch and Fantasy Island. She spent her formative years balancing textbooks with call sheets, doing her homework in the corners of busy soundstages. This relentless routine forged a deeply grounded professional discipline, teaching her how to navigate the overwhelming pressure of Hollywood without losing her footing. She understood early on that fame was a byproduct of hard work, not an entitlement. The opportunity that would define her legacy emerged in the fall of 1980. NBC's sitcom, The Facts of Life, was struggling with low ratings, prompting producers to initiate a massive creative overhaul for its second season. They needed a new character to shake up the dynamic of the Eastland Academy boarding school, a tough street smart girl from the Bronx to contrast with the wealthy, polished students. Nancy walked into the casting room and delivered a performance that completely altered the trajectory of the series. During a pivotal audition scene requiring deep emotional vulnerability, she cried with such raw, convincing intensity that the casting directors halted the search immediately. The studio bought a motorcycle, handed her a denim jacket, and Jo Polniaczek was born. From the moment she debuted on screen, Nancy became a cultural phenomenon. Jo Polniaczek was a revelation for the 1980s television landscape, a girl who fixed engines, challenged authority, and refused to conform to the traditional pageant queen aesthetics of the era. For 9 seasons and 189 episodes, she portrayed the fiercely independent teenager, quickly becoming the most popular character on the show. At the height of the sitcom's success, Nancy was receiving over 10,000 fan letters a week from young women who finally saw themselves represented on television. Yet despite the massive fame and the constant media attention, she remained remarkably insulated from the typical child star pitfalls. She avoided the toxic nightlife of the Sunset Strip, choosing instead to focus entirely on her craft and her family. She kept a strict boundary between the characters she played and the life she lived behind closed doors. As she transitioned into her early 20s, Nancy deliberately pushed the boundaries of her career beyond the sitcom format. She dominated the highly lucrative TV movie genre of the 1980s and 90s, taking on heavy dramatic roles that demanded immense psychological weight. Her performance in A Cry for Help, the Tracy Thurman story, where she portrayed a real-life survivor of severe domestic abuse, earned universal critical acclaim and proved her capability as a serious dramatic actress. The broadcast drew massive viewership and actually helped influence domestic violence legislation in the United States. She also expanded her influence behind the camera, taking on writing and directing roles for various television projects an achievement that cemented her status as a powerhouse in the industry. She proved that a child star could successfully transition into a respected, multifaceted Hollywood professional. By 1983, Nancy McKeon had built an ironclad career and a fiercely guarded private life. She was known to the public as the unbreakable Jo Polniaczek, a woman who projected an image of absolute self-reliance. She had mastered the mechanics of fame, maintaining a professional distance from the chaos of Hollywood. However, the protective walls she had spent years building were about to face an unexpected challenge. On the set of a television movie called High School U.S.A., the 17-year-old actress crossed paths with a young kinetic actor who shared her disciplined work ethic and razor-sharp sense of humor. The meeting would initiate a profoundly secret chapter in her life, pulling the tough independent star into a deeply emotional romance that would remain hidden from the world for decades. The girl who seemingly needed no one was about to meet the man who would leave a permanent mark on her heart. While other teenage stars of the 1980s were utilizing high-profile romances as currency to land on the covers of teen magazines, Nancy McKeon treated her private life like a classified document. She navigated her early years of fame with a fiercely protective boundary, engaging in only a few quiet, brief relationships. She understood implicitly that sharing her heart with the public meant inviting the industry to tear it apart for entertainment. She refused to date for the cameras, preferring the quiet stability of her family home to the chaotic flashing lights of the Sunset Strip. This strict preservation of her personal space ultimately set the stage for the most significant and most intensely guarded chapter of her youth. In the spring of 1983, the television landscape shifted when NBC assembled a roster of the era's brightest young talent for the movie High School U.S.A. Walking onto that bustling set, 17-year-old Nancy carried the massive, exhausting weight of the facts of life. She was immediately paired alongside a 21-year-old actor who was experiencing his own dizzying, meteoric rise as Alex P. Keaton's on the hit sitcom Family Ties. Michael J. Fox possessed a kinetic, vibrating energy, masking a deeply ingrained work ethic that perfectly mirrored Nancy's own blue-collar approach to the craft. They were two television heavyweights, sharing the exact same bizarre, isolating reality of early 80s stardom, carrying the financial success of entire networks on their young shoulders. The attraction was immediate and magnetic, rooted deeply in a shared language of exhaustion, comedic timing, and the sudden terrifying loss of anonymity. Michael possessed the rare ability to dismantle Nancy's heavily guarded exterior with a single perfectly delivered joke. In return, Nancy provided a grounded, nonsense-free harbor for a young man who was rapidly becoming the network's golden boy. They recognized themselves in each other, two kids working grueling adult hours, desperate for a normal, authentic connection in a deeply abnormal environment. Their bond was forged in the trenches of sound stages and script readings, quickly evolving from professional mutual respect into a profound, undeniable romance. What began on that television movie set blossomed into an intense 3-year relationship that defied the chaotic nature of Hollywood. For 36 months, Nancy McKeon and Michael J. Fox managed to pull off the ultimate industry illusion. They fell deeply in love right under the paparazzi's noses, without ever letting the tabloids catch a glimpse of the truth. Their romance existed entirely in stolen moments. They found sanctuary in quiet dinners tucked away in the back corners of obscure restaurants, late-night phone calls after 14-hour workdays, and the brief electric moments passing each other between studio lots. The sheer mechanics of keeping the relationship a secret required a massive emotional toll, but it also incubated a bond of fierce, unshakable loyalty. To the millions of fans tuning in every week, Nancy was the unbreakable, leather-clad Jo Polniaczek. But in the quiet, private presence of Michael, she was simply a teenager experiencing the terrifying, exhilarating freefall of first love. Michael understood the unique psychological pressure of having your awkward coming-of-age broadcast to 30 million people. They became each other's safe room, shielding one another from the relentless demands of studio executives, obsessive fans, and the crushing expectations of their own success. For 3 years, they built an invisible fortress where the fame couldn't reach them. However, the very industry that brought them together was quietly preparing to rip them apart. By 1985, the dynamic of their relationship shifted with the force of a cultural tsunami. Michael was cast as Marty McFly in Steven Spielberg's Back to the Future. His life transformed into a punishing marathon, filming family ties during the day and shooting the time travel epic throughout the night. He was sleeping barely 2 hours a day, surviving on adrenaline, coffee, and pure burning ambition. When the movie hit theaters, Michael J. Fox didn't just become famous. He became the most recognizable face on the entire planet. The velocity of his ascension was staggering, altering the gravity of his world forever. The logistical reality of megastardom began to suffocate their private, carefully constructed world. It became impossible for Michael to walk down a street, let alone maintain the quiet, hidden romance they had so fiercely protected. The physical distance grew as his promotional tours spanned the globe, and the emotional distance widened under the crushing weight of his new reality. The breakup that followed was a slow, agonizing fracture. It wasn't born out of betrayal, scandal, or fading affection. It was a devastating casualty of geography and unprecedented fame. The Hollywood machine simply demanded every ounce of his time and energy, leaving absolutely no room for the girl who had known him before he belonged to the world. They surrendered to the schedule, walking away from a love that was still very much alive. Decades later, the psychological residue of that severance remains deeply ingrained in Nancy's timeline. She eventually moved forward, building a beautiful, fulfilling life, marrying Mark Andrus in 2003, and raising 2 daughters in a stable, loving home away from the Hollywood glare. Yet the memory of those 3 hidden years retained a pristine, untouched quality in her mind. First love always leaves a permanent mark, but a first love shared in the intense pressure cooker of global fame, protected by absolute secrecy, creates a memory that defies time. She spent years carrying the silent weight of what could have been navigating the subtle subconscious comparisons that inevitably follow a romance of that magnitude. As she looks back at the sprawling narrative of her life, Nancy McKeon approaches her history with a profound, quiet grace. Admitting that Michael J. Fox was the definitive love of her youth isn't an act of disrespect to her present reality. It is a raw, honest honoring of the girl she used to be. She acknowledges the painful, beautiful truth that a romance doesn't have to end in marriage to be the most impactful emotional event of your life. Michael represented a time when everything was electric, terrifying, and deeply genuine. He was the boy who made the toughest girl on television drop her guard, and she was the girl who gave the world's biggest star a quiet place to hide. The confession at age 60 is a final tender tribute to a secret they kept perfectly, and a love that, despite the passage of 40 years, never truly lost its gravitational pull. In the decades that followed the silent heartbreak of her youth, Nancy McKeon did something incredibly rare for a former television idol. She quietly and successfully built a normal, healthy reality. She refused to chase the fading echoes of 1980s stardom, and she entirely avoided the tabloid tragedies that claimed so many of her Hollywood peers. Instead, she pivoted toward absolute stability. In 2003, she married Mark Andrus, a film technician she met on the set of a television movie. Together, they made a deliberate, life-altering decision to relocate to a quiet ranch near Austin, Texas, placing 2,000 miles between their growing family and the toxic gravity of Los Angeles. Nancy gave birth to 2 daughters, Aurora and Austin, willingly trading the relentless demands of the camera for the grounded, unscripted reality of motherhood. She continued to work strictly on her own terms, taking selective roles in series like The Division and Sunny with a Chance, but her ultimate priority was undisputable. She had built a multi-million-dollar career, but her family was her masterpiece. Yet finding a lasting, beautiful marriage does not erase the profound, permanent impact of a defining youthful romance. Nancy's life is anchored in deep, unwavering contentment with her husband, which is exactly what provides her the emotional safety to finally speak the truth about her past. Admitting that Michael J. Fox was the great sweeping love of her early life is not a betrayal of her current happiness. It is a mature, breathtaking acknowledgement of how the human heart is actually constructed. She recognizes that the boy who matched her intense work ethic understood the terrifying velocity of her fame and held her hand in the shadows of the 1980s, permanently altered her emotional DNA. We are all walking mosaics, built from the fragmented pieces of the people we have loved and lost. Michael was the quiet earthquake that proved the toughest girl on television had a heart that could shatter. Looking back at the incredible trajectory of Nancy McKeon's life, we see a woman who masterfully defied every Hollywood cliché. To the public, she will always be Jo Polniaczek, the leather-clad rebel who taught an entire generation of young women how to stand their ground without apologizing. She was the consummate professional who dominated the ratings and directed her own shows before she was 25. But beyond the iconic characters and the impressive resume, she is a woman who successfully protected the most sacred parts of her soul from an industry designed to consume them. Her 40-year silence regarding Michael J. Fox stands as a powerful testament to a bygone era, a time when some secrets were kept sacred, and a love story didn't need to be broadcast to a global audience in order to be profoundly real. At 60, Nancy McKeon teaches us a devastatingly beautiful lesson about memory and time. She proves that the people who shape our youth never truly leave the room. A relationship does not have to end in a lifelong marriage to be the most defining emotional event of your timeline. Sometimes the person who couldn't stay is the exact person who taught you how to love in the first place. Do you have a ghost from your own youth? Is there a person who didn't make it to your present, but whose memory still holds a permanent quiet space in your heart? Drop into the comments below and share your story. If you believe that true love leaves a mark that easily outlasts the passage of 40 years, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel feed for more untold stories of the real humans behind the Hollywood legends. We will see you in the next one.